I never planned to fall for him, it just happened. It started one rainy evening when my best friend's older brother, Ethan, offered me a place to stay. The roads were flooded, my phone was dead, and somehow his quiet smile felt like the only light left in the world. I told myself it was just one night, just until the storm passed. But storms don't always happen outside, sometimes they happen inside you. That night something shifted. The house felt smaller, the silence louder, and every glance between us said the things we were too afraid to admit. He was older, more confident, the kind of person who carried both calm and chaos in his eyes. I should have left the next morning. But when Ethan looked at me, really looked at me, I realized this wasn't just a crush. It was something deeper, something that could change everything: friendship, family, and maybe the rest of my life. This is the story of how one unexpected night changed who I was and who I wanted to be. The rain had started long before I reached Ethan's street. By the time I turned the corner, my sneakers were soaked, and the cold wind cut through every layer I wore. I could barely see through the curtain of rain. My backpack, with my phone, charger, and spare clothes, felt like a brick strapped to my shoulders. Liam, my best friend, had texted earlier. "Mom and Dad are out, you can crash here if it gets bad." But when I finally reached their porch, it was Liam who opened the door. It was Ethan. He stood there, framed by the warm glow of the hallway light, wearing a gray hoodie and that slightly amused half-smile I remembered from years ago. He was older now, maybe 24, taller than before. His dark hair was messy, and his stormy blue eyes looked like they could see straight through me. "Hey," he said softly, his voice steady. "You look like you fought the weather and lost." I tried to laugh but only managed to shiver. "Liam texted me, he said I could stay." "Yeah, I know," Ethan said, interrupting gently. "Come in before you turn into a popsicle." The moment I stepped inside, warmth wrapped around me. That familiar scent of cedar and citrus still lingered, the same one I remembered from years ago. But tonight it felt different. Heavier, quieter. "Where's Liam?" I asked, looking around. Ethan closed the door behind me. "He had to head out, study group, I think. He'll be late. Guess you're stuck with me tonight." Something in my chest tightened. I tried to play it cool, but every time he smiled, that calm, easy smile, I felt the flutter I'd been trying to ignore. Ethan had always been the quiet one. The older brother who didn't talk much but always noticed everything. He tossed me a towel. "Dry off, you look like a disaster." "Thanks," I muttered, running it through my hair. He chuckled. "You still have that nervous laugh. You used to do that when you came over as kids." "I don't," I started, then stopped, realizing I did. Ethan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me in that thoughtful, unreadable way he always did. Later, after I changed into some of Liam's old clothes, we sat in the living room. The storm outside was relentless, thunder rolling like an angry drum. The lights flickered once, and Ethan lit a few candles just in case. "Remember when we used to build blanket forts in here?" I asked softly. He smiled. "Yeah, you always insisted on using every single pillow in the house." "Hey, it wasn't a real fort without a defense wall," I said, laughing. He laughed too, then paused, his expression softening, almost nostalgic. "You've changed, you're not that kid anymore." "Neither are you," I replied before realizing how heavy that sounded. For a moment silence filled the room. The firelight danced across his face, tracing the sharp lines of his jaw and the faint scar near his temple. He looked like someone who had learned how to be still in a noisy world. "College treating you okay?" he asked finally. "Yeah, it's fine, just different." "How so?" "I don't know," I said, staring into the mug in my hands. "Everyone's trying to figure themselves out, who they are, who they like, who they're supposed to be." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, that never really stops. I looked up, surprised by how honest he sounded. There was something comforting about it, something safe. The thunder cracked again, louder this time. The lights dimmed for a moment. I jumped, embarrassed. Ethan just smiled and handed me a mug of hot chocolate he'd made earlier. "Still extra marshmallows." I laughed. "You remember that?" "Of course, you used to sneak half the bag when Liam wasn't looking." I took a sip, the warmth spreading through me, melting the chill from my hands. "Thanks, Ethan, for letting me crash here." He shrugged, it's no big deal. But the way he said it, quiet, deliberate, made it feel like it was. Hours passed and the storm refused to stop. Ethan pulled out some old movies and we ended up watching The Perks of Being a Wallflower, one of my favorites. The final scene, the tunnel, the lights, the music, hit me just like it always did. Ethan noticed. That one gets you every time, huh? I nodded. Yeah, it's the feeling of being seen, like you spend so long hiding parts of yourself and suddenly someone just gets it. He looked at me, a little too long maybe. Then said quietly, yeah, I get that. Outside, the rain softened into a steady rhythm against the windows. And for the first time, the silence between us didn't feel awkward. It felt like something was beginning. The air was thick with that post-storm stillness, the kind that makes every sound feel louder than it should. Ethan leaned back on the couch, one arm resting casually along the backrest. So, he said lightly, you seeing anyone? The question caught me off guard. I glanced at him, trying to read his expression. No, not really. He smiled slightly, that sounds like a story. I laughed nervously, it's not, people at school just don't really notice me that way. Maybe they're just not looking closely enough, he said quietly. I froze, his tone was teasing, but the warmth in his eyes made something shift inside me. My chest tightened, my pulse quickened. I tried to brush it off, you're just saying that because you're nice. He tilted his head, I'm not that nice. Silence filled the space between us, soft but charged. I could hear everything, the ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the rain whispering against the windows. And suddenly, I noticed how close we were sitting. It was nearly midnight when the power finally went out. The room fell into darkness, except for the soft glow of a single candle on the coffee table. Well, Ethan said, sighing, guess the storm wins. I laughed softly, at least we've got candlelight, very romantic. He raised an eyebrow, is that your way of saying you're scared of the dark? Maybe, I admitted with a smile. Ethan shook his head but got up anyway. Come on, I'll grab some blankets, it's going to get cold fast. When he came back, he carried 2 thick comforters. We spread them near the fireplace, where the last embers still glowed faintly. We sat side by side, shoulders almost touching. The flickering light danced across his face, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. You know, he said quietly, you've grown up a lot since the last time I saw you like this. Like what? I asked softly. He looked at me, thoughtful, sitting here with that same look on your face, like the world outside doesn't make sense, but in here you're safe. My throat tightened, I didn't realize I still did that. He smiled gently, you always did. There it was again, that quiet electricity between us. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it was there, humming in the silence. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. So instead I whispered, it's weird being back here, everything's the same but it feels different. He nodded, you're different, that's why. I met his gaze. For a moment it felt like the whole room held its breath, the rain, the candlelight, the night itself. Everything faded except us. Then Ethan looked away, you should get some sleep, I'll take the couch. I shook my head, no, it's fine, you don't have to. He smiled faintly, I insist. But when I finally lay down on the couch, wrapped in his blanket, sleep didn't come. Every flicker of light, every sound, every heartbeat reminded me of the way he'd looked at me, not as Liam's friend, but as something else. At one point I heard him move. I opened my eyes just enough to see him adjusting the blanket that had slipped off me. His hand brushed lightly against my arm, a small, gentle touch, but it felt like a spark. He didn't say anything, neither did I. But when he went back to his spot, I could still feel the warmth of his hand, like an echo that wouldn't fade. I lay awake for a long time after that, listening to the rhythm of the rain, wondering if he was awake too. Because something had changed that night, quietly, imperceptibly, and deep down, I think we both knew it. The rain stopped sometime before dawn. When I opened my eyes, the world felt new. The air was fresh, the scent of wet earth drifting through the open window. For a few seconds I didn't move. The blanket around me still smelled faintly of cedar and of him. Then I heard footsteps from the kitchen, slow and steady. I turned expecting to see Liam, but it was Ethan. Barefoot, hair tousled, wearing a plain black t-shirt that clung just enough to make my stomach twist in ways I didn't fully understand. He noticed I was awake and smiled, that quiet, knowing smile. "Morning," he said, "you're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I admitted. He nodded, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "Yeah, storms have a way of sticking in your head even after they're gone." "How long was the power out?" I asked, sitting up. "Came back around 3, you were out cold." I laughed softly, guess I was more tired than I thought. He handed me a mug. "Here, coffee," I added, "sugar, you still take it that way, right?" That stopped me. "You remember that?" He shrugged, sipping his own. "I remember a lot of things." There it was again, that tone, not flirtatious, not teasing, just honest. And somehow, that honesty made my heart race more than anything else. We sat at the small dining table as sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting the wood in soft gold. Ethan scrolled through his phone, checking weather updates while I watched the steam rise from my cup, trying not to stare at him for too long. "So," he said finally, "what's the plan? Heading home once things dry up?" "Yeah, probably," I said, hesitating. He looked up. "You don't sound too sure." "I mean, I could stay a little longer, if that's okay." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Ethan didn't answer right away. His eyes lingered on mine, searching, steady, quiet. Then he nodded slowly. "You can stay as long as you want." A simple sentence, but it hit harder than I expected. Around noon, Liam came home, loud and smiling, completely unaware of the quiet shift that had happened between his brother and me. He dropped onto the couch beside me, tossing popcorn everywhere. "Man, can't believe the roads are still flooded," he said, scrolling through his phone. "You staying another night?" I shrugged. "Maybe, depends." "Cool, Ethan doesn't mind." I glanced at Ethan, who was standing by the kitchen counter cleaning up. He caught my eye briefly, a small smile ghosting across his lips. "Nope," he said casually, "don't mind at all." That single look, that tiny moment, was enough to set off a quiet flutter in my chest again. The rest of the day passed in fragments. Liam went upstairs to catch up on assignments, leaving Ethan and me alone again. We didn't plan it, but somehow we ended up outside on the back porch, soaking in the calm after the storm. The yard still glistened with raindrops, and somewhere in the distance, a lawn mower hummed softly. Ethan leaned against the railing, sipping lemonade this time. I sat on the steps, knees pulled to my chest, trying to look anywhere but at him. "You're quiet today," he said. I smiled faintly. "You always notice that." He shrugged. "You're usually a talker. When you go quiet, it means you're thinking too much." I half smiled. "You really do remember everything." "Not everything," he said, "just the important parts." The air between us felt heavy, not uncomfortable, but charged. I could feel his eyes on me, not in a way that made me nervous, but in a way that made me feel seen. "You ever think about how weird it is," I asked softly, "how time changes people? I used to think you had it all figured out." Ethan laughed quietly. "That's the biggest lie adulthood sells us. No one has it figured out, we just get better at pretending." I studied him for a moment, the way his jaw tensed when he thought, the faint crease near his eyes when he smiled. He wasn't perfect, but he felt real in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Later that evening, Liam ordered pizza and convinced us to watch an old action movie. Halfway through, he fell asleep on the couch, head tilted back, mouth slightly open. Ethan and I exchanged amused glances. "Some things never change," I whispered. Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, he used to fall asleep halfway through movie nights all the time." We sat there for a while, the movie flickering in front of us, Liam's soft snores filling the background. I tried to focus on the screen, but every time Ethan shifted, every time his arm brushed the back of the couch near mine, I felt that quiet spark again. At one point, I caught his reflection in the darkened TV screen. He wasn't watching the movie either, he was watching me. I turned, meeting his gaze this time. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the rain gutters and the faint music of the movie credits. Ethan's eyes softened. He leaned forward slightly. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quietly, "just thinking." "About what?" "About how some things feel different now." He didn't ask what I meant, he just nodded like he already knew. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, golden and bright. Liam had gone out early to meet friends, leaving the house quiet again. I found Ethan in the backyard fixing something near the fence. He looked up when he saw me, wiping his hands on a towel. "Hey, you sleep okay?" "Yeah," I said, "mostly." He gave that small, knowing smile again. "Mostly, huh?" I laughed softly. "You don't miss much, do you?" "No," he said quietly, "not when it comes to you." The words hung in the air, fragile and deliberate. I looked down, trying to steady my heartbeat. "Ethan!" He stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't have to say anything, he exhaled slowly. "You've become someone I didn't expect to feel this way about." The world seemed to narrow around us, the sound of the wind, the sunlight through the trees, the quiet distance between his hand and mine. I wanted to tell him I'd thought about him more times than I'd ever admit, that every visit, every glance had built up to this quiet, terrifying moment. But before I could, Liam's voice echoed from inside the house. "Ethan, you seen my keys?" We both froze. Ethan stepped back, his expression unreadable now. "There on the table," he called, then turned to me and said quietly, "Guess we'll talk later." I nodded, "Yeah, later." But the way he looked at me before turning away told me everything I needed to know. Something had changed for both of us. That evening, I packed my things. The roads were clear again, the world back to normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. Ethan stood by the door as I slipped on my jacket. Liam was upstairs shouting into his headset, completely oblivious to the quiet storm unfolding in the hallway. "So," Ethan said softly, "heading out?" "Yeah. Be careful on the road." "I will." He hesitated, then added, "You know, you don't have to wait for another storm to come by." I looked at him confused. He smiled faintly, "You can just come over if you want." My throat tightened. "Yeah, I'd like that." For a moment, it looked like he might reach out to hold my arm to stop me, but he didn't. He just watched as I stepped outside, the cool air brushing against my face. I turned one last time. He was still there, one hand on the doorframe, eyes filled with quiet longing and restraint. And somehow, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something neither of us could quite define. 2 weeks passed before I saw Ethan again, 2 long weeks of replaying every glance, every half-smile, every unspoken word that still echoed between us. Liam had invited me to a small get-together before everyone left for their summer jobs. I told myself I was going for him, but deep down I knew I wanted to see Ethan. When I arrived, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. Laughter drifted from the backyard, music pulsing softly through the air. I barely had time to knock before Liam called out my name, pulling me into a quick hug. "Hey, you made it, grab a drink, everyone's out back." I nodded, pretending to scan the crowd, but really I was looking for one person. And then I saw him. Ethan stood near the grill, sleeves rolled up, a faint streak of charcoal on his wrist. His laugh was low, warm, and familiar. For a moment he looked exactly as he had that night during the storm, steady, effortless, and my chest tightened all over again. When he finally noticed me, his expression softened. It wasn't surprise. It was recognition, quiet, genuine. He nodded once, and that single gesture was enough to start the storm inside me all over again. The night moved slowly. Lights strung across the yard flickered as the sun disappeared, the air heavy with the smell of grilled food and the hum of easy conversation. I laughed, talked, played along, but part of me kept drifting toward him. Every time I looked up, Ethan was there, never too close, never too far, just aware. Later, Liam and a few friends decided to head out for ice cream. Ethan stayed behind to clean up, and I offered to help, partly out of politeness, partly out of something else. "Sure," he said simply, handing me a plate, "if you don't mind dish duty." We worked side by side in the quiet kitchen, the only sounds the running water and faint music from a neighbor's stereo. The air outside was warm, the scent of summer rain still lingering. "You been good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, trying not to overthink things. He smiled slightly. "And how's that going?" "Terribly," I laughed. He chuckled, setting a pan aside. "You always did think too much. Even as a kid, you'd sit in the corner just watching everyone." "I liked observing," I said. "It was safer than being seen." Ethan turned off the tap, drying his hands. "And now?" Now, I said softly, I think I want to be seen. His eyes lifted to mine, steady and unreadable. Something in the air shifted, thick, charged, waiting. Then maybe, he said quietly, you should let someone see you. I swallowed hard. What if that someone already does? For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he stepped closer, just enough for the space between us to hum. Then maybe it's time they knew, he whispered. The front door opened suddenly, laughter spilling in. Liam's voice echoed down the hallway. We got cookies and cream. Ethan stepped back just as Liam came in, balancing a grocery bag. Thanks for cleaning up, man, you're a lifesaver, Liam said, then grinned at me. You staying over tonight? No storm this time, no excuses. I hesitated. I hadn't planned. Stay, Ethan said quickly, then caught himself. I mean, if you want. Liam was already distracted, rummaging through the freezer. Yeah, I said finally, sure. And just like that, the night began again. By midnight, the house had gone quiet. I stood by the guest room window watching the stars shimmer above the dark yard. Then came the soft creak of floorboards, a knock. Can I come in? Ethan's voice was low. Yeah. He stepped in barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. Chamomile, he said, helps with overthinking. I smiled faintly. You really do remember everything. He sat on the edge of the bed, handing me a mug. Couldn't sleep, he admitted. Figured you couldn't either. We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea under the soft glow of the bedside lamp. The quiet wasn't awkward, it was heavy with truth neither of us dared to name. I tried not to think about that night, I whispered. Didn't work, he said, setting his mug down. Me neither. He looked at me then, really looked. I didn't mean to make things complicated, he said slowly. You're my brother's friend, I told myself to stay quiet. Why didn't you? Because, he said softly, you looked at me the way I've always wanted someone to, like I wasn't just existing, like you actually saw me. His voice cracked slightly, and something inside me broke open. I did, I said, I do. The silence that followed was fragile but full. He reached out, slow, giving me room to pull away, but I didn't. His fingers brushed mine, and suddenly the world shrank to that single point of contact. No music, no drama, just a quiet, trembling understanding that we'd both been waiting for permission to feel something real. Ethan exhaled. I don't know where this goes, he said. I just know pretending I don't care stopped working. My throat tightened. Then don't pretend. He smiled, soft, uncertain but real, and for the first time I reached for him. Our hands met and neither of us looked away. We didn't sleep much that night, we didn't need to. We just talked about everything and nothing, about the years between us, the moments we never said out loud, what it meant to finally be seen. At one point he told me about the night he realized he might not be as sure of himself as he thought, how confusing it was, how lonely. I used to think there was something wrong with me, he said quietly, until I stopped trying to be the version of myself everyone else wrote for me. I smiled. You sound like someone still rewriting. Maybe I am, he said. Maybe you're part of the new chapter. The way he said it, quiet, almost afraid to hope, made me realize this wasn't just about attraction. It was about honesty, about finally choosing to stop hiding. When the first light of dawn slipped through the curtains, we were still sitting side by side. The sky was soft gray, the kind of morning that promises change. I guess things won't be simple anymore, I whispered. Ethan laughed gently. Things worth feeling never are. The next day felt surreal. Liam was his usual energetic self, teasing me about my messy hair and sleepy eyes. Ethan and I moved carefully, aware of the invisible thread between us, saying nothing, but everything was different. Before I left, he walked me to the car. The summer air buzzed softly with cicadas. So, he said, hands in his pockets, where does this go from here? I met his eyes, wherever it needs to. He smiled, small, honest. That sounds like something you'd say. Maybe I got it from you. He stepped closer, not touching, just near enough for the air to shift. Take care of yourself, he said. I will, I whispered. Thanks. For what? For seeing me. Ethan's expression softened, always. Driving away, I caught a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, standing at the edge of the driveway, one hand raised in a quiet wave. The sunlight caught his face, and for a moment I saw it clearly, the same steadiness but now with something new. Hope. I didn't know what the future held or what Liam would think or how messy it might get. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't scared because the truth was finally out. And the truth, as terrifying as it was also beautiful.